Now let's apply the knowledge about GI and GL that we have just gathered to the common foods that we usually consume. So in today's discussion, I'll be taking representatives of some of the common food items, but very soon I'll be posting some detailed videos on few of these food items as well. So let's start with a very common, very frequently consumed food item, which is grains. And again, there are like a lot of misconceptions which are prevailing out there, and I just want to basically take a stab and clarify some of those. I mean, that's the main intent of having these discussions. Well, grains are considered to be very healthy, and yes, they are, but when and only when they are consumed in their natural and organic forms. A grain is usually composed of three components. One is the outer shell, the other one is the starchy part of it, the main carbohydrate, and the third one is a small aspect which is called as a germ. So when a whole grain which is consumed having all these components intact, then it definitely is a very healthy aspect, because it has good amount and a balance of not just carbohydrates and starch, but also a large amount of fibers and nutrients and fats and proteins also embedded in it. But when the same exact healthy grains get converted to a flour, it loses most of its nutrients, including the proteins, fats, and vitamins in it. So when a whole grain is consumed, which has everything intact, everything embedded in it in terms of nutrients, proteins, fats, all of that, it takes longer to digest that, and that's how it becomes really good in terms of the GI and GL, and which doesn't spike any blood glucose or insulin. Against when we consume, and usually we consume it a lot, the flour, right? I mean, of each one of these grains, be it wheat flour, be it rice flour, and so on and so forth. It becomes, I mean, most of the or all of the nutrients are completely taken away from it, completely wiped off from this particular grain, and only the starchy carbohydrate part is remaining in this particular grain flour as such. And when we consume that kind of a flour, I mean, it instantly spikes our blood glucose as well as insulin, because it gets digested into our blood very easily. Now let's take a look at the second most widely used carbohydrate, right, in our daily diets, which is vegetables. And most of the green vegetables, most of the other cruciferous vegetables are really good because they contain good amount of fibers, right, and a lot of nutrients also in terms of minerals and vitamins are also available, retained in the vegetable. But when it comes to potato, right, I mean, the white potato, it has one particular starch which is available in abundance as compared to a sweet potato. So potato usually contains amylopectins, while the sweet potatoes would contain something called as amylose, right? I mean, so these are two different starches, and the starch which is present in potato, which is amylopectin, is very fast to absorb and get digested as compared to the amylose in the sweet potatoes, which is really slow to get absorbed. And that's how consuming sweet potato is a far better option than consuming potatoes. So the next most widely used food item in our daily diet is milk. And though it cannot be exactly slotted under the category of carbs, because it has an almost equal distribution of carbs, proteins and fats, but still it has good amount of lactose, right? I mean, the kind of sugar that is present in milk, it has to be also looked upon very carefully, because though it contains calcium and other fats and proteins, the lactose is kind of damaging, because typically in fat-free, or let's say low-fat kind of a milk, since the fat is absent, the lactose is prevalent, and that's how you end up consuming more carbs, which is kind of damaging than having a very well-rounded product, which is a combination of equal amount of proteins, fats, and carbs. So the higher derivatives of milk, which are like ranging from the curd, the paneer, the cheese, the butter, and the ghee, those are the excellent sources of fats and proteins, and also the nutrients which are originating from milk, and which are definitely to be consumed in good proportions. Now let's talk about fruits, and which is directly falling under the category of carbohydrates, and which is very close to everyone's hearts, right? So fruits, definitely they have good amount of nutrients, fibers, but a lot of fructose also embedded in it, right? And people tend to eat a lot many fruits than it is required, considering only the better parts of it, like the nutrients and fibers, but completely ignoring the fructose, which is getting loaded into our body to a large extent. And this fructose has to be digested inside the liver, which is not its primary function, because the fructose cannot be digested in the intestine, right? Because the kind of enzymes which are required are not available in the intestine but only in the liver. And that's how we essentially stress our liver to a great extent. So consuming smaller quantities of fruits, typically strawberries, raspberries, those kinds of fruit, is definitely beneficial. What is more damaging is consuming fruit juices, right? Because what happens is, a juice is a very concentrated form of a fruit. It is devoid of all the fiber which is and the pulp which is available in the fruit, and it is only very concentrated fructose that we gulp, and essentially it gets dissolved, absorbed into our blood in the form of glucose almost instantaneously. So fruit juices is twice as damaging, because one, it gets digested being a fructose inside the liver, which liver shouldn't be doing, and second, it gets instantly absorbed in the blood, spiking the blood glucose and the insulin as well. So while fruits, their GI and GL is on the lower side to be consumed very optimally, very minimum, and fruit juices are to be completely avoided, because what happens is the fruit juice is consist of 3, 4, 5 different fruits, right? And then that's the quantity of fruit that is required to create the juice, and that's how the GL becomes on the higher side, and fruit juices are to be completely avoided. So lastly, let's take a look at the category of legumes, lentils, beans, pulses, dals, and all of that, right? So though they're not exactly falling under the category of carbs, since those are like kind of staple diet in our daily food intake, I thought of like covering it over here. So the composition of lentils and legumes is different than the prevalent grains, which are kind of refined or processed grains. The lentils or legumes usually contain good amount of proteins, fibers, and starch, which are very slow absorbing, and essentially it takes time for it to get digested and get converted into glucose, and thus have minimal blood glucose spiking effect as such. So for example, a grain based idli and a dal based medu vada, a medu vada is far better to consume than an idli. The reason being, again, I won't get into the details of grains and idli because we already have covered that. When it comes to medu vada, A, it is created out of dal, B, it is fried. So even if it is fried, and if it is fried in, let's say, a very good quality of oil or ghee, it is basically bundled with good amount of fats, and that's how it becomes a lot healthier and slower to get digested into our system, and it will have very minimal effects on our blood glucose and insulin levels. Thus the chances of anyone becoming an insulin resistant would be far lesser when a person is eating or consuming more dals or legumes or lentils than as compared to the grains. While an instant question must have been popped up in your mind about how come a fried vada or a fried food can be healthier than an idli, please hold on to your thought for me to be clarifying most of your doubts on fat in my next video. And finally, let's debunk the aura or the myth that is created around apple and the phrase that goes like an apple a day keeps doctor away. While an apple has good amount of fructose and fibers and moderate amount of nutrients, the nutrients are far lesser than, let's say, a bunch of nuts, an egg yolk, or animal meat. So nutrients like vitamins C, D, and E, minerals like folic acid, iron, and calcium, and trace minerals like magnesium and potassium are available in abundance when it comes to nuts, an egg yolk, or an animal meat, as compared to those are available in very small quantities in an apple. So another quick example, vitamin A, which is abundantly available in a deal leaf or a colocosea, which is shepu and aduchi bhaji in Marathi, as compared to the amount of vitamin A which is available in mango or even in carrots. Also, the mineral zinc, which is available in abundance in sesame, teal, right, compared to what is available in a bajra or a wheat flour. So today we have covered the GI and the GL, the glycemic index and glycemic load of most of the common foods. and we also have looked at which are the safer foods to consume so as to not initiate any insulin resistance in our body. So some of the safer foods to consume are the whole grains, not the flour as such, the green leafy vegetables, the sweet potato, not much of the potato, the pulses, legumes, and the lentils are definitely a great bait to have. Higher derivatives of milk, not much of a milk, is definitely a great food item to consume. And obviously only a bit of fruits, typically the berries, and skipping most of the other fruits and the juices has to be completely avoided. I hope this helps you in terms of making some very positive lifestyle changes, also helping you in terms of making your next grocery list, and essentially in terms of staying healthy and staying safe. That's it for now, and see you in the next. Thank you.